Today, there are over 8 billion humans living on Earth. We build cities, write songs, fall in love, and tell ourselves we've evolved past our brutal beginnings. But look closer. A car cuts you off and your pulse spikes. A stranger insults you online and your hands shake. You cheer when your team crushes the other side. Beneath the polished surface, the ancient circuitry still hums. The same instincts that once made us hunters and survivors are still running the show. We call it anger, pride, justice, but underneath it's the same biological code written by millions of years of struggle. The truth is, we didn't invent violence. Violence invented us. It shaped our brains, our stories, our societies. Every war, every argument, every act of courage and cruelty comes from the same hardware. We are the descendants of those who fought and won. The ones who didn't are gone. So the real question isn't why humans are violent. It's how we learn to control it and what happens when we don't. If you're here to think before you sleep, that's exactly why I make these. Subscribe, maybe, and tell me where you're watching from. I read them all. Tokyo at sunrise, Chicago past midnight, one violent, beautiful species still trying to understand itself. You know that rush that hits you when someone cuts you off in traffic, and for a split second you want to chase them down just to make them feel what you felt? Or when a fight breaks out at school and the crowd circles up fast, shouting, recording, adrenaline rising like it's a show? Or when you watch a brutal knockout online and feel that strange mix of shock and excitement? Everyone pretends they don't get it, but they do. That pulse, that spark deep inside, that lights up when conflict starts. We like to think we're civilized now, above all that primal chaos, but we're not. That spark is older than cities, older than fire, older even than us. It's the echo of survival, written into our blood. We are the descendants of the ones who fought and lived long enough to pass on their instincts. You don't come from the peaceful ones who backed down. You come from the ones who stood their ground when it mattered. And that instinct didn't just vanish when we built smartphones and schools. It's still here, buried under rules, waiting for a reason. That's what scientists mean when they say humans are hardwired for aggression. It's not about being evil or cruel. It's about being alive in a world that used to kill the unprepared. For millions of years, every one of your ancestors lived in a constant state of danger. Not imagined danger, but real predators, real hunger, real rivals who wanted the same food, the same land, the same mate. In that world, fear alone wasn't enough. The ones who survived weren't just cautious, they were ready to act, ready to defend, ready to attack when pushed. That readiness became instinct, passed down generation after generation until it reached you. When you feel anger, that's ancient biology waking up, not some modern glitch. Your heartbeat spikes, your muscles tighten, your vision sharpens. Your body still thinks you're about to fight for your life. The problem is that the world changed faster than our wiring did. Now those same instincts that once kept us alive can explode over small insults, internet comments, and games. We still chase that rush because our brains reward it. Aggression lights up the same reward systems as victory and pleasure. That's why people crowd around fights, why we build entire sports around combat, why action movies feel so satisfying. Violence has always been part of the human story. But here's the twist. It's not random chaos, it's controlled fire. We learned how to use it, when to hold it back, when to release it. The same energy that fuels destruction also fuels courage, protection, and resistance. The impulse to fight can save lives when it's pointed in the right direction. The question isn't whether we're violent by nature. The question is whether we've learned to aim that nature towards something better, because pretending we're not built for aggression doesn't make it go away. It just leaves it waiting, quiet, ready to surface when we least expect it. Long before there were people, before language or fire or even the idea of safety, life on Earth was a constant test between those who hunted and those who ran. Every heartbeat in the ancient forests and plains was a coin flip between predator and prey. Imagine small mammals scurrying through the shadows while giant reptiles ruled the land. They survived by being jumpy, nervous, and fast. Every sound might be a threat, every movement a sign of death. Those who froze too long or trusted too easily didn't make it. The ones that did survive passed on the instincts that told them to run, hide, fight, and never forget. Millions of years later, those instincts are still alive inside us. The roots of human violence don't start with humans. They start with survival systems that existed long before we had names or thoughts. The earliest mammals developed a brain wired to react first and think later. Deep inside that brain was the amygdala, a tiny almond-shaped region that could flood the body with fear or rage in an instant. It didn't care about logic, it cared about staying alive. When danger appeared, it triggered a chain reaction through the body, pushing blood to the muscles, sharpening vision, speeding up the heart. That ancient alarm system is still running in you right now. When you jump at a loud sound or snap back when someone startles you, that's the same reflex that saved our ancestors from extinction. Over time, the creatures that mastered both fear and aggression ruled the food chain. Some evolved sharper claws, others sharper minds. Primates, like our distant ancestors, learned that strength alone wasn't enough. They needed teamwork, planning, and memory. They learned who to trust and who to fight. They began forming alliances and defending territories. Every fight wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about dominance, protection, and reputation. These behaviors carved deep grooves into our evolution, shaping brains that could calculate threat and opportunity in an instant. Even in peaceful times, the brain kept those circuits active, always ready for danger. By the time early primates started walking upright, the war between predator and prey had already sculpted the human nervous system. The chemicals that fueled fear also fueled courage. The same adrenaline that made a creature run could also make it stand and fight. This duality became our secret weapon. Humans evolved from creatures that could shift between fear and aggression faster than almost any other species. That flexibility made us survivors. It's why we can be gentle one moment and fierce the next. Our ancestors didn't have the luxury of calm lives. Every sunrise brought new predators, new hunger, new battles for survival. Over millions of years, the mind became a battlefield of instincts, always preparing for threats that never fully went away. So when you feel your pulse race for no reason, or your body tense up before a fight that never happens, remember this: you're feeling the weight of deep time. You're carrying the same instincts that kept your ancestors alive in a world where hesitation meant death. We were born from predators and prey, and both sides still live within us. If you want to see where human violence really comes from, you don't have to look at history books or war footage. You just have to watch our closest relatives in the wild. Chimpanzees look playful and curious at first, grooming each other, sharing food, caring for their young. But beneath that calm surface, their world runs on power, alliances, and sudden outbursts of brutal aggression. Scientists who spent years observing them saw something that changed how we understand ourselves. Chimps don't just fight in random bursts. They organize. They plan. They patrol their borders in small groups, moving quietly through the trees, scanning for rivals from neighboring troops. When they find one, especially a lone male, they strike fast. The attacks are coordinated, often lethal. They beat, bite, and tear until the intruder stops moving. Then they vanish back into the forest as if nothing happened. It is not survival in the moment, it is strategy. They know that weakening a rival group means more food, more mates, more safety for their own. It is war at a level that was once thought uniquely human. Sometimes, when a new male rises in power, he kills the infants of the old one. That way, the mothers return to fertility faster and can carry his offspring instead. It sounds cruel, but in the logic of evolution, it works. What makes it unsettling is how familiar it feels. Chimpanzees don't kill because they are evil. They kill because it works for their genes. Humans are built from the same blueprint. For decades, scientists resisted this idea. They wanted to believe that aggression was something we learned, not something inherited. Then, in the 1970s, field researchers like Jane Goodall began to witness violent raids among wild chimpanzees. The first recorded case shocked the world. A group that once lived peacefully split into two. Over the next few years, one half systematically wiped out the other. It wasn't random chaos, it was organized extermination. The survivors expanded into the dead group's territory. It looked like history repeating itself long before humans arrived. Bonobos, another close relative, are often held up as the opposite. They resolve conflict through affection instead of fighting. But that difference comes from environment, not magic. Bonobos evolved in areas rich with food and fewer predators. Chimps evolved where competition was harsh. Scarcity sharpened their aggression. It showed that violence isn't universal or inevitable. It adapts to the world it grows in. Humans share the same flexibility. In peaceful times, cooperation pays off. In harsh times, aggression returns. What this means is that the potential for violence is part of us, waiting for the right conditions. The chimpanzee doesn't need politics or religion to start a war. It just needs territory, fear, and opportunity. When you look at human conflict, you see the same pattern, only scaled up. We have laws and armies and technology, but the instincts behind them are ancient. Watching a chimp patrol its borders is like looking through time, seeing the prototype of every battle humans have ever fought. The violent ape isn't a different creature. It's the version of us that never went extinct. Picture life 100,000 years ago. There are no cities, no governments, no safe places to hide behind walls. The world is open and wild, filled with predators that see you as food and strangers who might see you as competition. Every day is a test of awareness. Every sound in the dark could mean danger. Every unfamiliar face could mean death. In that kind of world, being nice to everyone would get you killed. Our ancestors lived in small tribes of 30 to 50 people, usually relatives or close allies. These were the only people you could truly trust. Everyone else was a possible threat. Survival depended on loyalty inside the tribe and suspicion toward everyone outside it. Over thousands of generations, evolution rewarded the humans who could make that split-second judgment between friend and enemy. It built a brain that scans faces for signs of trust or betrayal and reacts before logic can even speak. That ancient hardware is still running inside your head today. When you feel uneasy around strangers or instantly warm to people who seem familiar, that's your tribal brain doing its job. Back then, those instincts saved lives. If a rival group appeared near your hunting ground, hesitation could cost your family everything. Preemptive attacks were often the safest choice. The groups that acted fast and struck first tended to survive, while those who waited or avoided conflict were wiped out or enslaved. Over time, natural selection didn't just favor strength or size. It favored readiness, the ability to switch from calm to violent in a heartbeat. It created a species that could cooperate deeply within its tribe, but become fierce and merciless toward outsiders. The same chemistry that bonded families also fueled aggression. Oxytocin, the hormone that strengthens trust, also increases hostility toward those not in the group. Our ancestors didn't see this as contradiction. To love your tribe meant to defend it without hesitation. If that meant fighting, then fighting was sacred. As humans spread across the planet, these tribal instincts shaped everything from alliances to war. They learned to recognize each other by marks, songs, and language. They told stories of heroes who defended their people and villains who betrayed them. Violence was not random. It was organized, moralized, justified. It became part of identity. Even today, that wiring remains. When sports teams face off, when nations go to war, when people argue online, it's the same pattern repeating in safer forms. Our brains are still wired for a world where small tribes fought for survival in dangerous landscapes. We may have built cities and laws, but deep down the mind still thinks in circles of us and them. In that ancient world, aggression was protection. It was how you kept your kin alive when the night was long and the wild was close. The dangerous part is that the world has changed, but our tribal brains haven't. The same instincts that once saved us can now turn neighbor against neighbor. Every human carries a silent radar in their head, always scanning for who belongs and who does not. It is not something you turn on. It is automatic. You walk into a room, and before a word is spoken, your brain starts sorting faces, voices, and movements into invisible categories. Friend or stranger, safe or risky, us or them. This isn't new. It's one of the oldest tricks evolution ever built. In the ancient world, trusting the wrong person could get you killed. Our ancestors survived by forming tight groups and defending them fiercely. If someone looked, sounded, or acted differently, that difference was a warning. It meant they might take your food, your land, or your life. The humans who made quick judgments survived long enough to pass those instincts on. What started as a survival mechanism became the foundation of our social world. The love you feel for family, the pride you feel in your hometown, the loyalty you feel to a team or country, all come from the same source. The brain rewards belonging. It floods us with chemicals that make connection feel good. Helping someone from your group triggers the same pleasure system as eating or winning. But the opposite is true too. When we see someone from the outside, those same circuits can shut down. The empathy that comes so easily for one group can vanish for another. This is how humans became both deeply cooperative and dangerously divided. The same instincts that built friendship and teamwork also built rivalry and hate. Early tribes relied on these feelings to survive. Loyalty was strength, betrayal was death. Groups that trusted each other and distrusted outsiders lasted longer. Over time, this emotional wiring became stronger than logic. Even today, your brain reacts faster to symbols of your group than to facts or arguments. A flag, a logo, a chant. These things can trigger feelings stronger than reason. That's why people can fight for a cause they barely understand or hate strangers they've never met. The modern world is full of examples. Nations rally around identity. Gangs defend colors. Online fandoms form armies to attack rivals over music, movies, or games. It looks childish, but it's ancient biology playing dress-up. Underneath the screens and slogans, it's the same tribal code repeating itself. Love the group, protect it, distrust outsiders. For most of human history, That wiring made sense. Now it often tears us apart. The problem isn't that we care too much about our groups. It's that our brains still think in small circles while our world has become massive. We can communicate across the planet, but our instincts are still tuned to villages. The trick to peace isn't pretending the us versus them switch doesn't exist. It's learning how to stretch it. To teach the brain that us can include more people than it used to, because every war, every feud, every prejudice starts with the same ancient whisper: they are not one of us. Inside your skull there is a machine built for survival. It hums quietly until something threatens you. Then it explodes into action before you even know what is happening. This machine is ancient, older than speech, older than reason. At its center sits a small structure called the amygdala. It is only about the size of an almond, but it has shaped the fate of every creature that ever lived long enough to reproduce. When your eyes see danger, or your ears hear it, the amygdala decides what happens next. It does not wait for facts. It does not ask if you might be wrong. It floods your body with signals that say, fight, flee, or freeze. Your heart races, your breathing quickens, your muscles tighten. In less than a heartbeat, your body transforms into a weapon or a shield. This is the war machine inside you doing its job. The strange part is that this same system can also light up when you are angry at someone online, or when you argue and feel your pulse climb. The brain cannot tell the difference between a tiger in the bushes and an insult on a screen. The amygdala reacts to threat, not truth. Once it fires, another system joins the fight, the reward network. Buried deep in your brain are circuits that release dopamine when you win, when you defend yourself, or when you get revenge. It feels good to fight back because your brain pays you for it. Evolution built that loop so ancient humans would not back down when survival was on the line. But in the modern world, it means anger can become addictive. Retaliation feels righteous, even when it solves nothing. You can see it everywhere, in road rage, arguments, and politics. People get hooked on the feeling of being right, of standing their ground, even when it leads nowhere. Meanwhile, another part of your brain is trying to catch up. The prefrontal cortex, the area behind your forehead, is the voice of reason, empathy, and control. It can override the amygdala, but it is slower. By the time logic steps in, the emotional war has already begun. This is why people say things they regret or act in ways they cannot explain. Their hardware launched before their ethics loaded. The design is not broken, it is just old. It evolved for a world where hesitation could mean death. Now that same speed can cause chaos. Scientists call it the low road, the shortcut from threat to reaction. The high road, the thinking path, takes longer. Learning to pause, to breathe, to give the high road a chance, is like retraining a wild animal. It takes practice. The truth is that our brains are not peaceful machines. They are living fossils of every fight our ancestors survived. The amygdala is the alarm. The reward system is the cheerleader, and reason is the referee that shows up late. Knowing that doesn't make the anger vanish, but it gives you a choice. You can let the war machine run the show, or you can learn how to steer it. There is a reason why winning feels like fire in your chest, and losing feels like falling through the floor. Deep inside the body, victory and defeat are not just emotions, they are chemical storms. When you win, your brain releases waves of dopamine and testosterone, the same mix that ancient warriors felt when they stood over a rival and claimed dominance. It is not arrogance, it is biology rewarding survival. In the world of our ancestors, status meant safety. High-status males and females had better access to food, mates, and protection. Low status meant fewer chances to pass on your genes. That pressure carved instincts so deep that even today, a simple argument or insult can feel like life or death to the brain. In small tribes, people watched each other constantly, reading posture, tone, and confidence. Every gesture mattered. A glare could challenge authority. A bowed head could avoid conflict. When fights did happen, they were rarely random. They were performances, tests of dominance meant to settle rank. The winner gained respect and influence. The loser often lived, but carried the invisible wound of humiliation. That feeling was dangerous because it could destroy group unity. So evolution made humiliation unbearable. It forces the brain to seek balance, to restore status, to get even. That drive is the seed of revenge. It is why people can risk everything to prove they will not be disrespected. Modern science has measured this. When someone feels insulted or cheated, their body releases cortisol, a stress hormone that drives anxiety, and testosterone rises as if preparing for battle. The mix can make people reckless, violent, or obsessed with payback. In the past, that reaction had purpose. It protected honor, deterred bullies, and kept social order. In the modern world, it can spiral out of control. A rumor, a slight on social media, or an embarrassing moment can feel like an attack on identity. The brain still thinks it is being challenged in front of the tribe, even if it is just a few strangers online. That is why humiliation can trigger reactions far beyond reason. People quit jobs, start fights, or even kill over pride. It is the ancient circuitry misfiring in a new environment. The same hormones that once made hunters bold now flare up in classrooms, offices, and digital comment sections. But there is another side to this chemistry. The rush of victory, the pleasure of respect, the glow of teamwork, those feelings come from the same source. When we achieve something or gain recognition, the brain floods us with the same hormones that fueled ancient dominance battles. That is why athletes cry after a win, or why applause can feel addictive. The drive for status is not evil. It is the reason humans build, compete, and strive. The danger comes when status becomes survival again, when pride feels like oxygen. Understanding that every surge of rage or triumph is built from ancient biology is not an excuse, it is a map. It shows us that the same chemistry that drives violence can also drive greatness, depending on where we aim it. Watch a group of children at play and you will see echoes of ancient battles. They turn sticks into swords, run in packs, wrestle in the dirt, and shout orders like tiny generals. It looks like chaos, but it is not. It is training. Every tackle, every pretend punch, every chase is the brain's way of learning when to fight, when to stop, and how to control the storm inside. Long before schools or rules, young humans had to master aggression the same way they mastered walking or talking. Play was their classroom. In the wild, young mammals do the same thing. Wolf pups wrestle and bite. Lion cubs stalk and pounce. They are not trying to hurt each other. They are learning balance, timing, and limits. Children do it too, only with imagination added. A game of cops and robbers, or superheroes and villains, is not just fun, it is a safe rehearsal for power and courage. When a child pretends to be the hero, they practice standing up to danger. When they play the villain, they explore what power feels like and where it crosses the line. Through play, the violent circuits in the brain are tested, refined, and tamed. Scientists studying childhood roughhousing have found something surprising. The kids who wrestle the most are not the most violent later in life. They are often better at self-control. They learn the rhythm of conflict, How far is too far? When to back off? Play is where empathy and aggression meet and learn to coexist. In early tribes, this kind of play had serious value. It prepared children for hunting, for defending the group, for survival in a dangerous world. A young person who froze during real danger could die, but one who had practiced bravery through play stood a better chance. The instincts we see in playgrounds today are the same instincts that once prepared our ancestors for battle. The weapons have changed, but the purpose is the same. Even modern toys mirror this pattern. Video games, sports, and competitive challenges all light up the same brain systems that evolved for fighting and strategy. The excitement, the tension, the thrill of the win, it is the modern form of an ancient rehearsal. The body feels alive under pressure because it remembers what pressure meant. There is also a deeper lesson in play. Children learn not only how to fight, but how not to. Every time they stop before hurting someone or apologize after going too far, the brain records that as important. It builds the foundation for restraint. The ability to switch off aggression is just as vital as the ability to turn it on. Without that, the world would be chaos. So the next time you see children playing war, remember that they are not celebrating violence. They are learning how to live with it. They are shaping the oldest instincts humanity carries, turning raw survival energy into confidence, courage, and control. From the moment humans began telling stories, violence found its place among the gods. Every culture carved its fears and battles into myth. The Greeks told of Ares, the god of war, who thrived on blood and chaos. The Norse worshipped Odin, who demanded warriors die bravely so he could fill his hall with the fallen. The Aztecs offered human hearts to the sun to keep it rising. These stories were not just entertainment. They were blueprints for how to understand killing. When people saw blood on their hands, myth gave it meaning. It turned violence from horror into purpose. Early humans lived in a world where death came often and without warning. War, disease, and famine were constant companions. Stories became tools to explain why it had to be this way. The gods demanded sacrifice, the ancestors required vengeance, the tribe needed courage. Violence became sacred duty. It gave structure to chaos and reason to suffering. When a warrior took a life, it wasn't just for survival. It was for the gods, the king, the land. That sense of destiny made violence easier to bear and easier to repeat. Myths also built heroes. From Gilgamesh to Achilles, stories celebrated those who fought not because they wanted to, but because they had to. The hero's rage was holy. His victory meant safety for his people. His death was an offering. In those tales, killing wasn't seen as cruelty. It was the price of order. By turning warriors into legends, societies kept the cycle alive. Every generation grew up hearing that courage and blood were linked, that glory could be earned only through conflict. Even the monsters in myth served a purpose. Dragons, demons, giants, and dark spirits all gave form to human fear. They represented the unknown dangers of the world, the chaos outside the tribe. When heroes slayed them, it wasn't just fantasy. It was a symbolic rehearsal for real life, a way to remind people that violence could protect the light. Religious rituals followed the same logic. Sacrifices were acts of control, attempts to bargain with the unpredictable. Offering blood, animal or human, was humanity's earliest way of saying we understand the cost. Across centuries, this connection between violence and purity stayed strong. Crusades, holy wars, executions, all cloaked brutality in divine approval. To kill in the name of God was not murder, it was service. It showed that once violence was given sacred meaning, it could justify anything. Yet behind every myth and ritual was the same truth. Humans were trying to live with what evolution had built into them. We were violent by nature but desperate for meaning. So we wrapped our instincts in stories that made them noble. Even today, you can see this pattern. In movies, games, and national myths, violence is still framed as righteous when it defends something larger than self. The gods may have changed, but the stories remain the same. They remind us that the line between sacred and savage has always been drawn in blood. Long before nations or flags, humans began marking themselves with signs that said who they were. Paint on skin, beads on necks, carved symbols in wood. These were more than decorations. They were boundaries. A totem on a stick or a colour painted across the face told everyone which group you belonged to and which ones you did not. The moment humans learned to create identity, they also learned to weaponize it. A mark could unite a tribe, but it could also divide a world. When small groups of hunter-gatherers started to grow into larger communities, it became harder to know who to trust. You could no longer remember every face or name, so people created shortcuts. Shared symbols became proof of loyalty. If you wore the same paint or carried the same totem, you were one of us. If you didn't, you were a stranger. The brain already had instincts for us versus them, and now it had visual cues to reinforce them. Seeing your tribe's colors triggered comfort. Seeing another tribe's markings triggered fear. It was a primitive social technology that made cooperation inside the group stronger and violence outside the group easier. Anthropologists believe this was the birth of organized conflict. When humans could instantly recognize allies and enemies, they could coordinate attacks and defense faster. Rituals turned war into ceremony. Before battle, groups would dance, paint their bodies, and sing the same chants. It bonded them emotionally, filling them with courage and unity. At the same time, these rituals stripped the enemy of humanity. They became symbols too, enemies of the gods, monsters of the stories. Killing them felt like cleansing rather than cruelty. The first battle lines were drawn not on maps, but on skin. Every tribe believed its symbols carried protection. Every victory confirmed that belief. The stronger the identity, the stronger the divide. This pattern continued as human groups grew into villages and early civilizations. Totems became flags, markings became uniforms, and stories became laws. The more people shared a symbol, the easier it was for leaders to call them to war. You didn't need to know the reason. You just needed to know that your side had to win. Even today, that same instinct echoes. Sports fans paint their faces. Soldiers wear insignia. Nations raise banners over armies. Each one says the same thing our ancestors once painted on cave walls. We belong together. They do not. The power of these symbols lies in emotion, not reason. They connect directly to the tribal brain, bypassing logic. That is why they can move people to courage or cruelty with equal strength. Understanding this doesn't make symbols less beautiful. It makes them more dangerous. The totems that once united small tribes now command entire populations. The marks that once meant safety can now ignite wars. The first battle lines were drawn in the mind, traced in colour, and carried forward through time. What began as belonging became the blueprint for every conflict that followed. In the beginning, violence was personal. Someone stole your food, hurt your kin, or insulted your honour, and you struck back. It was simple and brutal, eye for eye, blood for blood. But as families grew into clans and clans into tribes, revenge began to spread like fire. One killing led to another. One grudge sparked generations of hatred. Entire lineages could vanish over an insult that no one even remembered. This was the first chain reaction of human conflict, and it was unstoppable until someone learned how to control it. That someone was usually a leader. Chiefs, elders, and later kings stepped in to stop the endless cycle of payback by offering something new: collective vengeance. Instead of everyone fighting everyone, the tribe would fight together against a common enemy. It turned scattered chaos into organized force. A war party could now act as one, striking swiftly and retreating before rivals could recover. The leaders who mastered this gained more power than anyone before them. They realized that anger was a resource, and if they could direct it, they could rule with it. The tribal mind that once defended families could now defend empires. As farming created wealth and territory became worth fighting for, leaders began turning vengeance into politics. Raids became tools for expansion. Capturing land, livestock, and people brought glory and survival. Killing was no longer about payback, it was about control. And because humans are storytellers, every war needed a reason. Leaders wrapped conquest in myth. They claimed the gods demanded victory, or that their tribe was chosen to rule. These stories turned aggression into destiny. Soldiers marched believing they were serving justice, not greed. The truth was simpler. Power had learned to speak the language of the tribal brain. The same instincts that once protected families were now fueling armies. When a chief or king called for war, the people obeyed because it felt like defending kin. They wore the symbols of their tribe or nation, carried the songs of their ancestors, and marched into battle believing they were right. From Mesopotamian kings to the pharaohs of Egypt, from the Mayans to the Vikings, this pattern repeated. Each civilization built monuments to victory and called it divine order. But beneath the carvings and crowns was the same old code: loyalty, fear, revenge. As societies grew richer, war became more efficient. Bronze swords turned into iron blades, spears became arrows, and the number of dead multiplied. The leaders who could command violence became gods in the eyes of their people. Those who resisted were wiped out. Blood feuds had evolved into slaughter on a scale the world had never seen. Yet the emotional fuel was always the same. The leaders gave the orders, but the soldiers carried the instincts. Each battle was a mirror of the old world. Families avenging families, tribes protecting tribes, only now with banners and drums instead of sticks and stones. Organized killing was never about progress. It was about mastering what was already inside us. And history shows that once someone learns how to weaponize human loyalty, they rarely stop. The first weapons were not tools of hatred, they were tools of fear. A sharp stick, a stone blade, a piece of fire-hardened wood, each one was an answer to the question every human once asked: how do I keep death away from me? When the first hunter lifted a spear, he was not inventing murder, he was inventing distance, a way to strike without being struck. That single step changed everything. The spear became a knife, the knife became a sword, and soon the sword became a symbol of honor and power. Each new weapon made killing faster, cleaner, and easier. But the mind behind the weapon stayed the same. The body still shook with adrenaline, the heart still pounded with fear, and the eyes still searched for mercy that rarely came. Thousands of years later, humans would look back and call it progress. In truth, it was practice. Every new technology of war was an experiment in efficiency. Bronze made blades stronger. Iron made them sharper. The bow and arrow let you kill from beyond arm's reach. The invention of gunpowder turned war into thunder. For the first time, soldiers could end lives without seeing faces. Distance began to erode empathy. You could fire into a crowd and never know who fell. When cannons arrived, killing became mechanical. When the musket evolved into the rifle, one finger could decide hundreds of fates. Yet even as technology advanced, the human body never changed. The same ancient hormones flooded the bloodstream. The same panic and pride gripped the heart. The same tribal instincts whispered that the enemy deserved it. The only difference was speed. In the 20th century, war left the battlefield and entered the sky. Planes dropped bombs that erased cities. Machine guns turned battlefields into storms of metal. The gap between human intention and destruction grew wider with every invention. Then came the atomic bomb. A single explosion in 1945 carried more death than centuries of sword fights combined. For the first time, humanity built a weapon that even its creators feared to use. But fear didn't stop innovation. Missiles followed, then computers, and now algorithms. The newest warriors sit behind screens, piloting drones that kill targets thousands of miles away. The machine sees, locks on, and fires before the human brain can fully feel the weight of the act. It is killing by proxy, ancient aggression powered by silicon. Our nervous systems still react as if we are holding spears, but our tools now reach across continents. The body sweats, the pulse rises, the mind floods with the same primal emotions, yet the battlefield has vanished behind pixels and code. Technology didn't create violence. It amplified what was already there, the will to survive, the hunger for power, the reflex to destroy threats before they destroy us. We keep inventing faster ways to kill because we keep refusing to outgrow the instincts that make killing feel necessary. The machines evolve, but the mind remains ancient, a Stone Age brain driving a modern war. Before every war, before every massacre, before every act of cruelty that shocks the world, something happens quietly in the human mind. It is not the sound of gunfire or screams, it is language. Words change the way we see people. They turn neighbors into threats and strangers into monsters. It begins with small shifts. A person becomes a type. A group becomes a label. They are not individuals anymore. They are animals, insects, parasites, enemies. Once that change happens, the brain starts to do something terrifying. It stops recognizing the other as fully human. Scientists have seen this in brain scans. When people look at faces they consider part of their group, the empathy centers light up. When they look at faces labeled as outsiders, those same areas go quiet. It is not hatred at first, it is numbness. The first step toward cruelty is silence inside the mind where compassion used to live. History is filled with examples. In ancient wars, enemies were called demons or beasts. During the Crusades, entire populations were branded as infidels unworthy of mercy. In the 20th century, propaganda posters turned rival nations into caricatures, exaggerated and deformed until killing them felt like swatting bugs. Every time humans prepared for mass violence, someone carefully built that story first. Words and images turned individuals into symbols of fear. Once that switch flipped, the rest was easy. Soldiers, guards, even civilians could participate in acts they would once have found unthinkable. They believed they were cleansing the world, not destroying it. The mind protects itself by creating distance. It tells itself that the victims are not like us. They don't feel pain the same way. They don't think the same way. That lie is what lets people follow orders or stay silent while horrors unfold. It is not limited to war. The same pattern shows up in everyday life. Online arguments, school bullying, political divisions, all feed on the same trick. When you stop seeing someone as a person and start seeing them as an idea or an obstacle, empathy fades. Once empathy fades, almost anything becomes possible. The scary part is that this process doesn't require evil people. It only requires ordinary people under pressure, following emotion instead of thought. Dehumanization is efficient. It moves faster than reason. It spreads through jokes, rumors, and slogans until it feels natural. But it can also be reversed. The same brain that shuts down empathy can turn it back on. Seeing someone's face, hearing their story, realizing their pain mirrors your own. These things rebuild the bridge that language tried to burn. Every time a society slides toward hatred, it starts with words. Every time it climbs back, it starts with listening. Dehumanization is not a disease from the outside. It is a function of the same tribal brain that once helped us survive. The danger is forgetting that it is still there, waiting for the right story to tell us that someone else is less than human. When people imagine evil, they picture monsters, cold eyes, cruel smiles, someone born different from the rest of us. But history tells a quieter and more frightening truth. Most violence is not committed by monsters. It is carried out by ordinary people doing what they think they are supposed to do. Neighbors, soldiers, office workers, parents, people who laugh, love, and live normal lives until a moment comes when the rules change and something dark inside them wakes up. Psychologists learn this the hard way in the 20th century. After the Second World War, researchers wanted to understand how so many ordinary citizens could take part in atrocities. One of them, Stanley Milgram, ran an experiment in 1961. Volunteers were told to give electric shocks to another person for wrong answers. They didn't know the shocks were fake, but the screams they heard were real recordings. Every time the scientist in a white coat said, "Continue," most people did. Even when the victim begged, even when the sound stopped. 65% went all the way to what they believed was a lethal level. They weren't sadists. They were obedient. They trusted authority. The lesson was clear. You don't need to be cruel to do harm. You just need to be part of a system that tells you harm is duty. Another study, the Stanford Prison Experiment in 1971, showed how fast this transformation happens. Volunteers were split into guards and prisoners. Within days, the guards became abusive. The prisoners broke down emotionally. The experiment had to be stopped. The setting was fake, but the reactions were real. The situation had flipped the moral switch inside ordinary people. Fear, pressure, and group loyalty can override conscience in terrifying ways. Soldiers kill because their leaders tell them the enemy is less than human. Workers look away from injustice because everyone else does. Even silence becomes violence when it allows cruelty to continue. This is why the idea of the beast within is both true and misleading. The beast isn't some separate thing hiding in a few bad people. It is a potential in all of us, waiting for the right combination of stress, fear, and permission. What makes it so dangerous is how normal it feels from the inside. People rarely wake up and decide to do evil. They convince themselves they are doing what's necessary, what's expected, what everyone else is doing. It is the banality of the act that makes it horrifying. Violence doesn't always come with rage. Sometimes it comes with paperwork, orders, or silence. The line between good and evil isn't a wall, it's a sliding door, and it moves depending on where we stand, who we listen to, and how afraid we are. The truth is unsettling but freeing. If violence is situational, then so is peace. If people can be led into cruelty, they can also be led into courage. The beast within may never disappear, but it can be tamed by awareness, empathy, and choice. For as long as humans have told stories, we have watched others fight, fall, and bleed. From Roman arenas to boxing rings to movie screens, violence has always drawn a crowd. People gasp, cheer, and look away only to look back again. It feels wrong to enjoy it, yet the pull is undeniable. Why does bloodshed fascinate us so deeply? The answer lies in the same circuits that once kept our ancestors alive. When we see a fight, our brains react as if we are in danger too. The heart rate rises, adrenaline surges, the eyes lock on. It's a rehearsal, a simulation of threat without the real risk. Watching violence gives the body the thrill of survival while the mind stays safe. That rush is ancient. It's the same one our ancestors felt when they watched a predator chase prey or when they stood on the edge of a battlefield hoping their side would win. The danger excited them because it taught them who was brave, who was strong, who was lucky enough to live. Today, we call it entertainment, but the brain doesn't know the difference. The same reward systems light up when a hero lands a punch in a movie as when a gladiator struck in the arena. Scientists say this is because our empathy circuits mirror what we see. When we watch someone throw a punch, the motor regions in our own brain activate slightly, as if we're throwing it ourselves. We are built to experience conflict, even secondhand. Ancient societies understood this long before neuroscience did. Public executions and battles weren't just punishment or defense, they were theater. They reminded everyone of the cost of weakness and the power of courage. Violence on display taught the rules of life and death in a world without laws or screens. People watched to feel something real. That hasn't changed. Modern culture is full of safe violence. Movies, games, sports, and true crime all let us explore danger without facing it. When a fighter enters a ring, or a superhero takes on villains, we feel that primal spark, the echo of the ancient hunt. It excites us because it reconnects us with instincts we rarely use. But the line between fascination and desensitization is thin. Too much exposure can numb empathy, turning the extraordinary into normal. When violence becomes routine, the mind stops flinching. That's why societies have always struggled with how much is too much. The Romans built arenas for killing. We build screens for simulation. The tools changed, but the appetite stayed. Watching violence lets us release tension, face fear, and understand power. It also reveals something we don't like to admit. Deep down, part of us enjoys it because it reminds us we're alive. The pulse, the sweat, the adrenaline, it's the echo of our survival instincts waking up in a safe world. We love watching violence not because we are broken, but because we are still human, still wired to feel the thrill of danger even when it's only pretend. Across history, men have been taught one lesson louder than all others. Never look weak. From duels at dawn to street fights behind bars, from knights defending their honor to teenagers posting threats online, the same pattern repeats. The male script demands strength, respect, and reputation. And when those things are threatened, violence often follows. It's not just culture, it's biology, shaped by evolution. For millions of years, males in many species competed for status because status meant survival. High-ranking males got more food, more mates, more protection. Low-ranking males were ignored or pushed out. That ancient pressure carved deep instincts into the brain. When modern men feel insulted or humiliated, those same circuits flare as if their survival is on the line. Anthropologists call these systems honor cultures, societies where reputation is everything and shame is worse than death. You can see them across time. Medieval Europe had dueling. Samurai Japan had ritual suicide to restore lost honor. The American South had family feuds fought over disrespect. In each case, men believed that public humiliation erased their worth. The only way to get it back was through violence. A duel wasn't about killing an enemy. It was about proving you wouldn't be walked on. Even today, that instinct lingers. Studies show that when men from honor cultures are insulted, their testosterone spikes higher than men from non-honor cultures. Their heart rates climb, and their brains react as if facing physical threat. It's the ancient dominance system rebooting itself. The body prepares for battle, even in a modern world. That's why simple slights can turn deadly. A shove in a bar, a rude comment, a disrespectful look. It's not about the moment. It's about what the moment represents. A man standing in his social group, his reputation, his sense of self. When that feels attacked, the tribal brain demands payback. In some places, like parts of Latin America, the Middle East, and inner city gangs, honor is currency. Lose it, and you lose protection. The result is a constant tension between pride and survival. Violence becomes the language of respect. Even online, you can see this pattern. The tone changes, the chest puffs up, the insults fly. Digital honor duels happen daily in comment sections. The same hormonal storms that once drove sword fights now fuel arguments between avatars. The environment changed, but the instinct didn't. Yet beneath all this posturing is fragility. The male script is built on fear. Fear of being seen as weak, of losing face, of being left out. True strength, the kind that doesn't need to prove itself, is harder to teach because it doesn't trigger the same chemical reward. That's why so many societies keep recycling the same script. Men learn early that violence earns respect faster than vulnerability. Breaking that cycle means rewriting what honor means. Not as dominance or fear, but as control, the ability to walk away, to protect without destroying. Because until that happens, the fragile male ego will keep mistaking pride for power and shame for death. For all the blood in our history, for all the violence in our instincts, there is another side to the human code that kept us alive. We are killers, but we are also caretakers. The same evolution that wired the brain for aggression also wired it for love, empathy, and cooperation. Without that balance, we would have wiped ourselves out long ago. Deep inside the brain, chemicals like oxytocin and serotonin form the counterweight to rage. They flood us with warmth when we touch, hold, or help others. Oxytocin, sometimes called the bonding hormone, surges when a mother nurses her baby or when two friends share trust. It makes the brain feel safe, reinforcing connection the way adrenaline reinforces alertness. In the wild world of our ancestors, no one survived alone. Cooperation wasn't kindness, it was strategy. A mother couldn't protect her child 24 hours a day, so others helped. This shared care, called alloparenting, became a human superpower. It allowed communities to raise children together, spreading empathy through entire groups. Every act of care became an investment in the future, not just for one family, but for the tribe. While aggression protected us from outside threats, compassion kept us from turning on each other. Evolution favored both, because survival demanded both. Pair bonding, the formation of long-lasting relationships between mates, was another breakthrough. In most animals, mating is temporary, but in humans, attachment became a stable system for raising fragile, slow-growing children. Fathers and mothers stayed together longer, grandparents shared wisdom, siblings learned to cooperate. Over generations, these bonds reshaped the brain. The same neural circuits that drive competition began to light up for connection. Helping others triggered the same reward systems once reserved for winning. Empathy, laughter, storytelling, These became tools of peace that worked as powerfully as weapons. Cooperation allowed small groups to do what no single person could: building shelters, hunting larger prey, sharing food during hard seasons. The instinct to help became encoded as deeply as the instinct to fight, and just like aggression, it feels good because it had to. Our ancestors who felt joy from connection survived longer and raised more children. The same way the body rewards victory with dopamine, it rewards kindness with calm. When you hug someone or share food, your heart rate slows, your stress levels drop. The body tells the brain, this is safety. This is home. What makes humans unique is how these two systems coexist. We can destroy and nurture, often in the same breath. The capacity for violence keeps us alert. The capacity for care keeps us human. When people say love conquers hate, they are not just being poetic. They are describing an ancient evolutionary truth. Every time we choose compassion over cruelty, we are following the oldest survival code in our species. The one that made sure, after millions of years of danger, we didn't just endure. We learned to belong. Inside every human brain, there is a quiet war. One side is ancient, born from fear and survival, always scanning for danger. The other is newer, shaped by empathy, capable of seeing through another's eyes. These systems are not enemies by design, but they often clash like rival tribes sharing the same territory. When you feel threatened, the amygdala fires first, flooding your body with chemicals that sharpen instincts and narrow focus. Everything becomes black and white, safe or unsafe, us or them. But in the same skull, another network tries to slow things down. The mirror neuron system, scattered across your brain, begins to reflect what you see in others. When someone smiles, your neurons fire as if you are smiling too. When they cry, your brain echoes their sadness. This is the root of empathy, the biological bridge between self and other. The problem is that these two systems run on different timelines. The threat system acts in milliseconds. The empathy system takes seconds. By the time compassion loads, the impulse to fight or flee might already have control. This is why arguments escalate so quickly and regret comes so late. For most of human history, the fast response kept us alive. But as societies grew, empathy became just as essential. It allowed tribes to trade, families to form, and strangers to trust each other long enough to build civilization. The tension between these systems never disappeared. It became the neural tug-of-war that defines human behavior. Scientists studying this balance have found that empathy can literally deactivate aggression circuits. When you listen to someone's story or share a vulnerable moment, activity in your amygdala drops. The brain cannot fully see another person's pain and treat them as an enemy at the same time. This is why storytelling is such a powerful tool. Hearing someone's struggle lights up the same regions in your brain as if you lived it yourself. It turns abstract others into emotional mirrors. Ancient cultures used this instinct through rituals and myths that taught compassion by forcing people to imagine themselves in another's place. Modern films and books still do the same thing. They train empathy like a muscle, building resistance to the pull of aggression. But this balance is fragile. Fear can shut it down in seconds. Under stress, people revert to tribal instincts, seeing threat everywhere and connection nowhere. That is why empathy requires safety. It can only grow when the body feels calm enough to listen. The internal arms race between aggression and empathy never ends. It is the reason humanity builds hospitals and weapons, charities and armies. Each side evolves to keep up with the other. Understanding this tug-of-war does not erase conflict, but it reveals something hopeful. The part of the brain that drives aggression is powerful, but it is not the only voice. The part that feels, imagines, and understands is just as real. And every act of empathy is proof that evolution didn't only make us fighters, it made us capable of peace. Thousands of years ago, humans lived in small groups where every insult or injury could explode into violence. There were no police, no courts, no written rules. Justice meant revenge, and revenge meant endless cycles of blood. If someone killed your brother, you killed theirs, and their cousins killed yours. The body count could go on for generations. It was survival law, but it was chaos. Over time, something changed. As tribes grew into villages and villages into cities, constant revenge became too expensive. Trade required trust. Farming required stability. People needed a way to stop the spiral. So cultures began to hack the brain's violent software with social rules. The first patch was honor compensation, what some ancient societies called blood money. Instead of killing a murderer, a family could accept payment, livestock, tools, or land as symbolic justice. It transformed vengeance into transaction. The emotional satisfaction of retribution was replaced with the social satisfaction of resolution. It didn't erase anger, but it redirected it into structure. The second innovation was taboo. Cultures started naming certain acts as forbidden, not because of logic, but because of fear of divine punishment. Killing within the tribe, harming kin, or breaking oaths became sins, crimes against the gods as well as against people. By linking morality to the supernatural, early societies made restraint sacred. The fear of unseen punishment worked better than swords. As civilizations evolved, these customs turned into laws. Kings, councils, and later courts took over the job of deciding who deserved to be punished. This was a monumental shift. Justice moved from the hands of individuals to the hands of institutions. The idea was simple but revolutionary. The state would take revenge so you didn't have to. It broke the feedback loop of personal hatred that had haunted humanity for millennia. Codes like Hammurabi's in Babylon, written nearly 4,000 years ago, were not just lists of rules. They were early psychological technology, teaching humans to trade blood for order. Punishment became predictable, not emotional. By surrendering vengeance, people gained safety and reputation. If you followed the law, you could build wealth and alliances without living in fear of sudden death. Culture was slowly training the ancient circuitry of aggression to serve something bigger than impulse. Even religion played its part. Forgiveness, mercy, and patience became praised virtues. Instead of glorifying warriors alone, societies began to celebrate peacemakers, judges, and wise rulers. Violence didn't vanish, but it became disciplined. Every modern system, from traffic laws to courts, is built on this foundation. They are all ways of managing the same primal emotions that once ruled the wild. Culture didn't delete our capacity for violence. It learned to redirect it towards stability, to turn fury into justice and competition into progress. Deep down, the instincts are still there, waiting. But civilization's greatest trick was convincing us that not acting on them could be a form of strength. The sword was replaced by the rule, and for the first time, peace became profitable. The modern world is supposed to be safer than the one our ancestors lived in, but our brains don't know that. The same instincts that once helped small tribes survive now live inside a digital jungle. Instead of hunting grounds and firelight, we gather around screens. Instead of shouting across camps, we shout across comment sections. Social media has turned ancient tribal wiring into a global amplifier. Every like, share, and post taps the same circuits that once decided who belonged and who didn't. The platforms are built to trigger emotion because emotion keeps people watching. Outrage spreads faster than reason. Anger, fear, and moral disgust are contagious, lighting up the amygdala the same way danger once did. When you see a post that offends you, your brain reacts as if your tribe is under attack. You feel the pull to respond, to defend, to destroy the threat. The algorithm notices and feeds you more of the same. Soon your digital village is an echo chamber where everyone agrees the outsiders are monsters. It feels righteous, but it's just chemistry and code. Online shaming and pile-ons are the modern form of public punishment. In the past, people gathered in the square to watch executions or to drive out those who broke the rules. Today, it happens with retweets and comments instead of torches and stones. The crowd doesn't see a person anymore, just a symbol of wrongness to be erased. The brain rewards participation with dopamine. Every insult feels like justice. Every takedown feels like victory. It's ancient social enforcement, reborn through algorithms. The scary part is how anonymous it feels. Behind screens, empathy fades. There are no faces, no voices, no consequences. People who would never shout at someone in real life unleash fury online because the social cues that trigger restraint disappear. It's not that humans became crueler, it's that technology removed the brakes. The same goes for radicalization. Online groups can turn fear and belonging into weapons. They offer identity, purpose, and certainty in a confusing world. Once someone joins, the tribal brain locks in. Outsiders become enemies. Every post, every video strengthens the us versus them divide. It's the digital version of an ancient pattern, loyalty enforced by outrage. Algorithms act as invisible chiefs, rewarding the most extreme voices because they hold attention the longest. What we're seeing on our screens isn't new behavior. It's prehistoric behavior in high definition. Our minds evolved to survive in groups of 100 people, not global networks of billions. The emotional tools that once built cooperation now fuel division at scale, but understanding this gives us power. The same social brain that falls for outrage can also spread empathy. Every time you pause before posting, listen instead of reacting, or reach across disagreement, you are using modern awareness to calm ancient instincts. The digital age didn't invent mobs. It just gave them Wi-Fi. The challenge now is learning how to stay human inside a machine built to keep us angry. If you watch the news every night, you might think the world is falling apart. Wars, shootings, riots, endless footage of suffering. But if you zoom out, something unexpected appears. Statistically, humans are killing each other less than ever before. 1,000 years ago, life was short and violent. In medieval Europe, 1 in every 100 people might die by another person's hand. Duels, feuds, and executions were part of daily life. Public torture was entertainment. Today, in most places, that level of violence would be unthinkable. The odds of being murdered in modern societies are tiny compared to any past century. The paradox is that our instincts haven't changed. We still carry the same neural hardware that fueled ancient blood feuds. Yet somehow, culture and institutions have forced those impulses into smaller spaces. The story of human progress is not the death of violence, but its containment. Over time, law replaced revenge, courts replaced mobs, and trade replaced raiding. Governments learned that stability was more profitable than chaos. Empires that once thrived on conquest began to thrive on commerce. The sword gave way to the contract. Anthropologists studying ancient skeletons found that early hunter-gatherer societies had far higher death rates from conflict than modern nations at war. Even with all the atrocities of the 20th century, including 2 world wars and genocides, the long arc still bends downward. Fewer people die by violence today than in most of human history. But the violence that remains has changed in scale. The invention of industrial war turned killing into a mechanical process. One bomb can erase more lives in seconds than an entire ancient battle could in days. The tools became stronger, while the instincts stayed the same. This is what makes the modern age so strange. On one hand, the average person lives more peacefully than ever before. On the other, when violence does happen, it is catastrophic. Our empathy has expanded, but our weapons have too. Psychologists think this coexistence shows how tightly our violent impulses have been caged by culture. The fear of punishment, the pressure of reputation, and the moral codes we live by all work together to keep aggression under control. Yet the cage still rattles. Online hate, terrorism, domestic abuse, and organized crime prove that the instincts never disappeared, they just learned to hide beneath civility. Each generation must rebuild the walls that hold them back. What keeps hope alive is how often humans choose cooperation over cruelty. The fact that billions of people can live side by side in cities without tearing each other apart is itself a miracle of social evolution. Our species didn't erase violence. It learned to negotiate with it, to trade it for safety, stability, and survival. The world isn't peaceful because we became angels. It's peaceful because we built systems strong enough to keep the beast on a leash. The challenge now is making sure the leash holds, even as technology and fear keep testing the limits. Peace feels permanent until it isn't. People like to believe that civilization has tamed our violent instincts for good, but the truth is more fragile. The same brains that cooperate in comfort can turn ruthless when survival feels threatened. The circuits for aggression never vanished. They just sleep, waiting for the right mix of fear and scarcity to wake them up. History shows how quickly that switch can flip. During famines, neighbors who once shared food can become rivals overnight. When cities run out of resources, looting and panic follow. Even in modern times, a few days without power or supplies can reveal how thin the line really is between order and chaos. Our empathy runs on energy. When people are hungry, afraid, or desperate, the brain's priority shifts. The prefrontal cortex, the part that weighs ethics and long-term consequences, goes quiet. The amygdala and stress systems take over. It's the ancient emergency mode that once kept small bands alive during droughts or disasters. Cooperation worked when resources were enough for everyone. But when survival felt impossible, aggression became logic. Archaeologists studying ancient collapses found this pattern everywhere. When the rains failed in Mesopotamia, when crops withered in Egypt, when plagues swept through Europe, violence surged. Entire empires fractured into smaller, violent groups fighting for land and food. Modern science explains why. Scarcity triggers cortisol and adrenaline, pushing the body toward fight or flight. Groups start closing ranks, trusting only their own, distrusting outsiders. The tribal brain reawakens. What was once a marketplace of cooperation becomes a battlefield of desperation. You can see echoes of it today. When pandemics hit, people panic buy. When economies crash, crime rises. When climate disasters destroy homes, some communities come together while others descend into conflict. The difference often depends on one factor: how strong the social fabric was before the crisis. Societies that invest in trust, fairness, and shared responsibility can survive shocks with less violence. Those built on inequality and resentment fracture fast. Peace, it turns out, isn't the absence of violence. It's a balance of conditions that keep our violent wiring quiet. Full stomachs, stable governments, predictable weather, and a sense of justice all help the cooperative circuits win. Take those away, and the old code reboots. The same species that builds hospitals and schools can become the same species that burns them down when the world collapses. Understanding this isn't hopeless, it's a warning. Our capacity for peace depends on constant maintenance. The laws, norms, and empathy that keep us civil are not permanent software. They are fragile updates running on very old hardware. Every famine, pandemic, and climate crisis is a stress test. It reminds us that civilization isn't a new kind of human. It's the same human under better conditions. The violent switch is always there, waiting. The challenge of our time is to keep the power on so it never has a reason to flip. If violence is built into us, then peace has to be built around us. The human brain may come wired for fear and anger, but it can also be rewired through habit, experience, and culture. Evolution gave us reflexes. Civilization gives us choices. Every society that lasts learns how to teach those choices early. Education is where it begins. Not just reading or math, but emotional literacy, the ability to name what we feel before it becomes a reaction. Children who learn to recognize anger can learn to redirect it. Studies show that schools that teach empathy and conflict resolution see less bullying and more cooperation. It's not magic. It's training the brain to pause long enough for reason to catch up with instinct. The next layer is community. When people grow up in mixed neighborhoods where they see and speak to those different from themselves, the us versus them wiring weakens. The brain learns new categories. Instead of stranger or threat, it begins to register familiar and safe. That's why cities with more diversity tend to have lower rates of hate crimes. Exposure is an antidote to fear. The more faces you know, the fewer enemies your mind can invent. Conflict de-escalation builds on the same principle. Police departments, schools, and even prisons that teach calm communication instead of immediate force often see violence drop. When someone is trained to breathe before reacting, to listen before striking, the body's threat system stays in check. It's biology, not philosophy. You can't erase the reflex, but you can slow it down until compassion has time to intervene. Restorative justice does something even deeper. Instead of punishing crime with isolation, it forces connection. Offenders meet victims. They hear the pain they caused. The process activates empathy where shame and anger used to live. It turns punishment into understanding. This method has ancient roots in tribal councils, where harm was healed through storytelling and reparation rather than vengeance. The same idea is finding new life in modern systems trying to undo centuries of punishment driven by fear. Then there's narrative empathy, the quiet revolution. When we read, watch, or listen to stories from other perspectives, our brains light up in patterns almost identical to real-life experiences. A good story makes the mind rehearse compassion. This is why art, film, and literature matter more than they seem. They are empathy simulators, training the social imagination of millions at once. Rewiring violence is not about pretending we are peaceful creatures. It's about designing systems that reward restraint and connection, the way the old world rewarded aggression. The same way laws replaced duels. Education can replace prejudice, and empathy can replace rage. Our biology gave us reflexes that once kept us alive. Our intelligence gives us the power to rewrite their outcomes. The blood in our history proves what happens when instinct leads. The hope in our future depends on learning to let reason take the first move. Every person alive today carries the story of violence and compassion written inside them. It lives in the blood that rushes when we're angry and the tears that fall when we see someone else in pain. We are not angels who fell from grace or demons pretending to be kind. We are the descendants of survivors who learned to fight and to care, to destroy and to rebuild. Evolution didn't choose one side. It built both. Our ancestors made it through ice ages, famines, and wars, not because they were gentle, but because they were adaptable. They could hunt when they had to and help when they needed to. That duality is the blueprint of our species. The same hands that built weapons also built shelters. The same brain that plotted battles also painted caves and wrote songs. Violence and empathy are not opposites. They are twins born from the same struggle to live. The question that defines humanity isn't whether we are violent or peaceful. It's which part we feed. Understanding our wiring doesn't doom us. It gives us power. For the first time in history, we can see our instincts clearly. We know what chemicals surge when we're angry, which circuits light up when we feel threatened, and how empathy can quiet the storm. We can't erase those instincts, but we can choose how to use them. The urge to fight can defend what's right. The capacity for fear can protect others. The reflex to protect kin can expand to include strangers. The same biology that made warriors can also make healers. Every time a person chooses restraint over revenge, understanding over hate, cooperation over cruelty, they are rewriting evolution in real time. They are proving that awareness can be stronger than impulse. The story of humanity has always been a story of tension, between the knife and the hand that reaches to heal the wound, between the instinct to conquer and the instinct to connect. We stand on the edge of both. Technology has made us powerful enough to end everything, but also wise enough to understand what that means. The next chapter of our story depends on which instinct we honor. The reflex to destroy will always be easy. The choice to create will always take effort. But effort is what made us human in the first place. Our ancestors looked at a hostile world and refused to vanish. They found ways to cooperate when competition should have killed them. That same stubbornness lives in us. The blood that once drove us to war can drive us to build a world where peace is not weakness, but proof of control. The truth is not comforting, but it is freeing. We were built for both chaos and care. Which one we become is no longer biology's decision, it's ours. The future is not written in stone. It's written in blood, in the choices we make every day about what kind of humans we want to be.